Alright, now that we know the basics for using the World Editor and how to move around and create new maps, we're going to go ahead and dive into some more complicated topics. So first, let's go into the World Editor. I'm in one of my maps. This is my Dover map. It's currently a work in progress, but I'm working to recreate the city of Dover, Pennsylvania. Let's go ahead and talk about this bar. This is your toolbar for the World Editor, and we'll go left to right and just talk through each of these elements. So new level, we already know about that. This is how you create a new folder and start adding in items to that folder. Open level, self-explanatory. If you want to open up a different level, you can do it from here. I also recommend that you just go out of the World Editor and go to free roam and pick your level from here. It loads a little better, in my opinion, than using the open level feature. Save level, self-explanatory. Once you've made changes, you click save. Undo, redo, self-explanatory. If you moved an object, let's say I grab this lamppost and I press 1 and move it, and then I decide I don't want it, I can press Control Z, or I can press undo, redo, to undo and redo the change. Right? Cut, copy, and paste. These buttons I don't think actually work, but the shortcuts do. So if you have an item, you can Control C, Control V, Control D to duplicate it, right? I like to, well, my scroll speed is way too high. I like to just press Shift and use the gizmo to move the item, and it duplicates it in place. So if I have a whole house that I want to move, let's do this one over here. I can press Shift and then the arrow, and it copies it to wherever I go. It also keeps it on the level, which is quite nice, and then you can go from there. Alright, next we have the editor preferences. Let me go ahead and delete these. So editor preferences, pretty self-explanatory, but this is where you would find all the settings and options for the different elements of the World Editor. Asset browser, camera, files, gizmos. Read up on these. A lot of times some hidden features can be found within these that you may not know about. And then there's specific, like for example, they have in the terrain editor, they have different settings for the brush height, softness, and pressure that I don't believe are normally visible in that terrain editor. So you can kind of, this is like advanced features. When we talk about the asset browser in detail, I'm going to do a video on that. I'm going to come back to this preference and talk about the directories in a later video. And then lastly in this section is enable driving in the vehicle editor. So right now I have that checked, and as you can see, if I press the move arrows, I can drive my car. Let's see if I can just park it in my neighbor's driveway. Hell yeah. Without that checked, I can't accidentally drive my car. The game is still unpaused, right? Physics are still enabled, but I don't have to worry about it driving away on me. Alright, that's section 1. Now let's talk about section 2. Let me see if I can bring this back to my home spawn. Click home, yep. Section 2 is translate, key 1, we talked about that. Rotate, key 2. And scale, key 3. Local or world coordinates, key 4. And then the snap for the grid, snap for the rotation, snap for the toggle terrain, or the terrain rather, time of day settings, and the editor icons. So the first 3 we've already touched on already, but if you wanted to move something, you can press number 1 and move it. They call it transform, translate. If you wanted to rotate something, you can press 2, rotate it. And if you wanted to scale, you can press 3, and then you can scale in whatever axes you want to. So if you want to go just Z, straight up, scale on the y-axis, or if you press the center point, you can scale all 3 axes at the same time. One nice advanced feature is the ability to scale and rotate with precision. So if you press Control while you have your gizmo selected, you can rotate with precision. They call it fine rotation. Make sure you you release the click before you release the key, like I just didn't do. You can also do this with scale. So if you want to scale up on a slower scale, you could do that. Note how it's moving slower, right? Precision. Great. All right, so now we come to local coordinates. These are kind of more for rotation, I find. If you've worked in Blender or a different, modeling software, you're familiar with local versus world coordinates. So world coordinates means everything is relative to the world space, means the rotation constantly gets reset. You notice how the green bar is changing whenever you rotate something. So it's always resetting it to the world space whenever I rotate it. Local, if I switch it to local, it's going to do it local to the object. So notice how the bar doesn't change. It still stays the same bar, but yeah, undo that. I don't really use that too much, to be honest, but it can be helpful. Snapping, grid snap. Let's change the default to 1. Grid snap allows you to snap to a grid. It's an invisible grid. If you adjust your increment size, you can do 0.25, for example, and that will make sure that it stays to a grid. Helpful if you have like very specific objects that are already pre-sized a certain way and you want to keep them in line. Next we have our rotation snap. So similar to grid snapping, if we choose to rotate and we have that on, we can specify the degree of rotation. So 15 degrees, click, 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 click. And you can do a maximum of 45 degrees and just have that rotate in 45-degree increments. Works great. Next we have toggle terrain snap. So this is exactly what it sounds like. If you have an item that's floating in space and you want the bottom of the bounding box, which is this orange box, to be on the ground. Click toggle terrain snap and then you can move it and it will snap to the terrain. This isn't really useful for a lot of my objects that I make because the origin point of my object is not at the bottom of the bounding box. It wouldn't make any sense. I like to give a little bit of room. Let me go over one of the houses and show you. So my origin point is at the bottom of the house at the top of the foundation, right? So if I use terrain snap here, the whole thing would come up too far. And I can't lower it because I have terrain snap on. So it's at the edge of the bounding box. So I don't necessarily use that too often. It's helpful for some objects that have the same bounding box and center and origin point. I like to use a different technique, which is Control-Alt and move. So when you have an object and you press Control-Alt, it aligns the center point to the ground. And so I can drag this around. It's a little bit janky and use the scroll wheel to position it exactly where I want it to be, right? It also changes the camera speed as well, which we'll get to in a second. Sometimes the developers have overlap in the functionality. All right, and then next we have the time of day settings. So time of day defaults to 88, but you can set it to 0, and the sun is right in the middle of the sky, and then you can change it, and you can see the sun move as the sun does for a nice sunset. It's beautiful. Man, this game is pretty. And get nice and dark. I don't think I have anything that's... Do I have any lights on over here? No, I don't. Not yet. Some reflection off of the moon. But you can get a nice dark night evening. And then last button in this section is the editor icon and camera settings. So icon distance. So whenever there is a object that's in the map, you can change the icon distance and see that object. So these are all my decal roads. You can see the spawn circle right here. You can see the car. They all have icons. Helpful for like picking, I think specifically helpful for picking a beam object. Like I have these trash cans that I made, and they're tough to kind of grab sometimes. So if you select the icon, it allows you to click them. And then the last button is the camera speed. So self-explanatory, but when you have free cam turned on, Shift-C, what speed you fly around at. This is my normal speed, and then when I press the turbo button, the boost, it allows me to change that. You can go just absolutely bonkers fast, just fly across the map if you want to. I usually keep it around like 30. Shortcuts. So instead of using the toolbar, you can press Control for the icon distance. Look at that. Control and scroll. And then you can press Alt. See how it's changing up there? And I can change my camera speed. So now I'm at a 30. It's pretty good. Pretty good middle ground. Okay, I'm going to stop there for this video, and we'll dig into the next section in the next video.